Into this computer. Welcome everybody to Property Women's Member Spotlight segment. My name's Rachel Barnes and I want you to stay focused and make the most out of the information and inspiration that today's Member in Spotlight is about to share with us. If you have any questions from today's presentation, please make sure you write them down and we'll give you an address at the end to post them to on Facebook or otherwise an email address, because we want to get through as much information and inspiration as we can in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Now, our special member today is someone I've known for more than 10 years, and she's an amazing lady. She has always been looking to build her portfolio, build her knowledge, build her network, and build her personal development, I should say. She's doing lots of different things, and if you asked her to try something new, she'd give it a go, and she would work out how to do things, and she'd be very enthusiastic as well. That's the type of person we love in Property Women, where you're happy to get involved, try things differently, think things differently. So I'm going to be interviewing, as some of you may know, the amazing Lucinda Starr. Lucinda has worked for Property Women previously, still does a little bit to help us out, but she's got a lot of information to share with us about her strategy and about what she's doing at the moment with Airbnb. So welcome, Lucinda. How are you going?
Good, thank you, Rachel.
So good to talk to you. Now, I got to talk to you one-on-one, which was really nice recently over a coffee, because, of all the years we've sort of worked together, we hardly ever get to catch up. So it's really good to be able to spend some time with you. But obviously not everybody's going to do that. And when I caught up with you, you were telling me some stories about Airbnb, and I really wanted you to be able to share that with some of our members. So bearing in mind that, we know that lots of people talk about Airbnb and they have reasons for not doing it. There's a lot of myths out there. There's some misassumptions. And then there's obviously, does it work mathematically? So I know you're going to share some amazing stories and some information with us today. But I thought I'd start off with getting you to tell everybody else about who you are and what you do for a living, your investing history and career, and perhaps describe a typical day if you want to. And you've got 2 minutes starting from now.
Okay, so I'm Lucinda Starr. I actually now work as a learning and development event coordinator for the North Coast Primary Health Network, as well as run a successful Airbnb here in Moonee Beach. And I also do some stuff for Property Women and also for Judith Taylor for her
buyer's agency?
Yeah, her buyer's agency. So I'm quite busy. And amongst that, I also have 2 teenage boys that are quite sporty, and I'm travelling around with them quite often.
I don't know how you fit it all in your day.
I don't know sometimes. I wonder what I did before I had children. So I actually started investing when I was 21. So it's been quite a few years. And what inspired me to get into it is I actually read a book by Jan Summers, and then went to an event that she was speaking at. And unfortunately, the event that I went to was one of those 3-tier seminars where they fly you up to Brisbane to buy property. So we did actually sign up to be flown up, and I actually read Jan Summers' book. So we got flown up to go to one of those events, and they showed us some properties. But because I had already read the book before we went up there, I decided that we could do it on our own. So we didn't actually purchase anything from them, and we flew back down and left some very angry people up there. We're disappointed that we didn't sign on the dotted line. So that's actually when I realised that education and educating myself was really important before I actually went and purchased anything.
Oh, well done. A lot of people got caught out with those types of things. So just shows you, doesn't it, getting a bit of education before you sign any dotted line is the best way to go.
Absolutely. So from there, I've attended quite a few courses, Rena King's, or obviously Property Women events, and education has always been very important, I thought, in my investing career. So we did actually purchase some properties then when I was 21. We ended up with about 7 investment properties, and that was really great. We've also done some renovation, and we held on to a few of those properties but sold some when we started our family. So
awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, most people don't get any further than 2 properties, so 7 is excellent.
Yeah, no. And yeah, and so basically my buy and hold is buy and hold and renovate and sell. So was my strategy there.
So Airbnb didn't sort of come into that, did it, when you were talking about your strategy to start with? How did that come about?
No, so well, again, education. So we actually moved to Mooney Beach about 5 years ago. We were renting my mother's and father's house. Um, and I was listening to some things with property women, and they were talking about Airbnb, and we also were looking for a house to purchase in around the area. So we purchased that, and then we decided with mum and dad that they might want to try renting their house out for Airbnb.
How did they feel about that?
At first, they were a bit apprehensive, but when I looked at figures and I actually sent them some other information about Airbnb, we decided we'd give it a go.
Cool. So you manage it for them?
So I managed that property for them. So I listed it on Airbnb, and I go on and decide who's going to come and stay in the property, who's not, and I give them the keys and everything like that, clean the property.
Awesome.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, well, let's find out a little bit more about that. So you've got a 5-star rating. What does that mean?
So basically, everybody that comes and stays at the Airbnb can rate me and rate the accommodation, and they rate it on the area, the host, what the accommodation's like. So basically, most of them have rated me 5-star rating. So that's great.
It is. It makes it easy, doesn't it, when you're looking for accommodation and you know other people are giving it a good rating.
That's right.
So it looks really nice in the photos. Tell us more about it.
Yes, so one of the things with the Airbnb that I would recommend is that you get some professional photos done. Initially, because I quickly wanted to put it up there, I didn't get the nice professional ones done, but these have been done by somebody that actually works for NBN, and they actually look really nice on the site. Yeah, so I'd recommend that you get professional photos done when you're starting out. The other thing that I would recommend is that you do a really good description about the area, what's around, what bedding configuration you've got when you're listing the property. Yeah, and try and give them as much information as you can, so that they can make some educated decisions when they're actually booking their accommodation.
Yeah, that's a good idea because, you know, as you say, you can say how many guests you can have there. I'm looking at it now, the number of bedrooms, number of beds, number of bathrooms. So if you had perhaps a couple of couples with their kids and they were travelling together, I mean, that would be ideal, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And we quite often get 2 families that come and stay at this particular property. It's close to a park, it's close to the beach, it's close to the creek, there's a tavern up the road. So all that sort of information is important to add to your listing.
It's really marketing, isn't it? Good marketing, making sure that people know what they're getting. I noticed on your site as well, and I haven't got a picture of it, that you actually had an arrow with an aerial view so that people could see where it was in relation to the beach, which was awesome.
Yes, that's right. So that was done with a drone. So it's always exciting to get a drone up in the air.
Excellent. Well, that's great. But obviously, and a bit like your parents were, you know, what could go wrong? So let's start with some of the myths, because there's a lot of people that I've spoken to are pretty scared to actually get involved with hosting their property on Airbnb because they're scared that all these different things will go wrong. So I thought we'd go through some of those and you can tell us from your perspective what the answer is. So one of the things I hear is that you don't know who you'll be sharing your home with, because sometimes it's not that they have the whole house like with yours. They're actually somebody's living there and just renting out their spare room on Airbnb. You know, so what happens if they're untrustworthy? What's your response to that?
Okay, well, you don't actually have to take bookings straight away. You can actually interview the person before you make a decision whether you want them to come into your house. So you really do have control over who comes in and out of your property.
Great. So they get rated as well, the same as you've got a 5-star. They have their own rating as well?
Absolutely. So you can actually go online and have a look at the person that wants to rent your house. And there's usually reviews from other people about their experience with that person. So you can actually make an informed decision there. And again, if there is no reviews, you can interview them and give them a phone call and make sure you're feeling comfortable. And if you're not feeling comfortable, don't rent it to them.
Yeah, that's a good idea. First time we tried it, I had somebody who hadn't been on Airbnb before, but we spoke on the phone and I felt quite comfortable with her. And yeah, she was awesome and her family. What about my home will get wrecked? What's your answer to that?
Okay, so there's a few things here. You do have insurance. You still insure your property like you would if it was being rented permanently. There's also, you can take a bond on Airbnb, and you've got 48 hours to apply to get some of that bond if something's gone on in your property.
Oh, that's cool.
All covered, yeah. I did actually have somebody just recently that just the kids pulled on the curtain and the curtain rod came out and made a little bit of a hole in the wall. They've actually paid for that, and they actually rang me to tell me that they were sorry, and like before they. So yeah, I mean, accidents happen.
Exactly, but when they're sorry and they fixed it, or paying for it as well, that's awesome. Yeah,
absolutely. And when you're actually rating the people, you find that they're very, very careful because they do want to use Airbnb.
Yes, because that could stop their next line of accommodation if you give them a bad rating. So what about party animals that might upset your neighbours?
Okay, so there's a few things that I do here is I have a conversation with my neighbours. So my neighbours know that we're renting the property as an Airbnb. I let them know that if there's any trouble, they've got my details. I've also said to them that, the rules apply as if it was your own neighbour, that if, they're up and they're making noise unreasonably at an unreasonable hour, that to just follow the process of calling the police. We've only actually had one instance where there was people hoo-hooing till 2 o'clock in the morning. And that's the only instance that we've had, and we rent the house out for New Year's Eve and Christmas and all of that sort of stuff. So generally, again, because you're rating people, they really tend to keep the noise to the minimum. One of our rules actually on Airbnb is that they need to stop making too much noise after 10 o'clock because it is a residential area.
Cool. And I suppose, if you've got good neighbours next door and you've already talked to them about it, it makes it easy because they're sort of policing it for you, aren't they?
Absolutely. And go in and check on the neighbours and make sure they're still happy all the time. You want to keep them happy and on board and looking out for your property.
Yeah, you never know when they move, they might want you to manage it as Airbnb.
I actually have been approached by some people in Mooney Beach to manage their property.
Oh, that'll be another discussion. But there's so much work involved. You've got cleaning and sheets to change and all that type of stuff. That must take forever.
It doesn't actually. What I've actually found is, again, because you're rating people, the house, they keep the house nice and clean. All the dishes are always done and put away. And sometimes I actually walk into a property and wonder if actually anybody's stayed there. Nice and tidy. If I go in on my own to clean the property, it probably takes me about an hour and a half to just run through and do all the vacuuming, changing all the beds. But I do have a team behind me, my husband and 2 sons. And when they're involved, we're in and out in half an hour. So it's
That's great. And you've got teenage boys and you get them to work. I'm impressed.
I do have teenage boys. They whinge and moan a little bit, but they do get the job done in the end.
That's awesome. So get your team together. So one of the other things, like some people say, but why would I want to stay at an Airbnb when there's hotels and motels?
Okay, so some of the benefits of staying in an Airbnb is that you're in a home generally. So you can actually stay in our particular one, you can stay with 2 families. So it actually helps keep the costs down. You have access to a kitchen. You normally, in our accommodation, it's a bit more private, like you're not in a big commercial hotel area. You can make meals in the kitchen. You're staying, I suppose, with locals instead of just in a motel area.
Yeah. And especially when you've got a family, I think it's so much easier than trying to have, 2 rooms interconnecting doors and, trying to keep the kids quiet at certain times. They can't run around on the corridors. So it must be so much better for people with families to rent an entire home.
Absolutely.
And I know from our perspective, because we travel a lot and we use Airbnb a huge amount, for a couple of reasons. One is it's sometimes you get them in nice places, I say you don't get hotels perhaps in bad places, but, you might have a farm stay or something like that where you're traveling. So you're sort of staying somewhere a little bit different. And it's sometimes nice just to talk to somebody. And if you're traveling on your own, which I've done for work, just having somebody to come home to, can be nice rather than just going to a sterile hotel room. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But I know other people have said, but if my house isn't in a tourist spot, it's not going to work for me, is it?
Yeah, I've heard that too. But I actually think that sometimes that might actually be your marketing.
Mm.
Like, like it might actually work out really well because there's nothing else in that area and people might actually want to stay there. They might be passing through. And if there's nothing else in the area, you might be onto something. You might be
Yeah.
a gold mine.
Well, I think you're right because I know sometimes when we stay in Sydney, it can be quite cheap in Sydney because there's a lot of people doing Airbnb there, so there's a lot of competition. Whereas we were going from Adelaide to Melbourne, and we wanted to stop in Doombula, and it was very limited. I think there was only one place at the time that was available last minute, and we had to pay quite a bit of money, and it wasn't an area that I'd normally or a place that I'd normally choose. I remember thinking, if I knew somebody that invested in a house here, I'd be telling them to put it on Airbnb. But there's obviously still got to be some things that go wrong. So we sort of got rid of those myths. We got them out of the way. But, nothing's perfect. And I know we had a chat the other day and you made me laugh about a couple of things. But let's start off with the mistakes that you've made with your Airbnb listing.
Yeah, so one of the first mistakes that I made being a rookie person putting my listing up on Airbnb is I didn't quite know all the events that were happening in the area. So we actually have up here in Coffs Harbour a rally that happens in November, and I didn't actually put the prices up for that rally period. So somebody quickly got on and booked the accommodation, and then I realised that I could have actually made double for that. So do your research and make sure that you know what are the dates for your area that are the boom times, so that you can maximise the profit that you're getting from the property.
Excellent.
So the other thing that kind of happened that was a little bit scary was that we rented the property to a local, and I actually met the local. They wanted to all stay together with the family. Seemed like lovely people, and they were. But Joe and I drove past the property just to check on it, and the kids were on the roof.
Oh.
So that was a bit of a worry, but I actually texted them and they were getting a ball and things. So maybe put some rules around not getting on the roof and some things like that, so that people are aware they don't just put their kids on your roof. So
you wouldn't think they'd do that, would you, anyway?
You wouldn't think so, but yeah. Well, it's assumption, isn't it, that you think that people are reasonable like you, but there's some people that will stick their kids on somebody else's roof to get a ball.
So what else has happened for you?
So we've had some funny little things that have happened. I actually was going to a dinner party, and we had some people coming in late at night. So they're going to come at about 8:30, 9 o'clock. So I said to them, what I'll do is I made a prior arrangement to leave the keys in the garage in a specific location. And they were happy with that. So anyway, the time arrived that they were coming in, and I got a phone call and they couldn't find the keys. So I was on the phone with them and we were going through, and I said to them, the keys are like in the dryer in the garage, and they said, okay. And then they were in there, and they said they couldn't see the dryer. Now they were from Asia, so there was a little bit of a language barrier. So I thought maybe they just didn't know what a dryer was. So I was speaking to them, and I said to them, there's in the garage, and it's hanging on the wall, and it kind of looks like a washing machine, and it's white, and they're in there. So they still couldn't see it. So then I said, well, what about, can you see the window? And they said, yes, they could see the window and a door. And I said, and next to the door is a dryer. No, still no dryer. So this was going on for about 10 minutes. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to leave this dinner and I'm going to have to go and get the keys. I thought I'd try one last thing. I thought maybe if I get them to describe what is in the garage, they'll come across that white box, that mysterious white box hanging on the wall, and they'll call it something different. And I'll say, yes, that's where the keys are. So I said, oh, can you tell me what's in the garage? So he goes, yes, there's a black car. And in that instant, I realised that he was in the wrong garage. Garage. So they all went running and laughing that they were in the wrong garage. They found the right garage and found the keys and were able to get into the property.
That's really fun.
So never assume you know exactly the location of the person that's looking for the keys.
Oh, so next time it'll be the first question is, what do you see?
That's it. Maybe ask a few more questions first before you assume.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, so and then just a little another little funny story is that we actually had somebody that came into the property and they must have ordered Chinese food and they had those little chopsticks in those paper bags.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So they had a whole handful of those, and when I came in to clean the property, I thought, oh, I'll just leave those here in the cutlery drawer because it's quite fun. Kids like to use chopsticks and stuff from time to time. They'll have a good time with them, so I just left them there. A few weeks later, somebody came in, and the next morning I got this text message, which could be one of the reasons why I get a 5-star rating, by the way. They came into the property. And they texted me and they said, thank you so much, Lucinda, for providing chopsticks. We really appreciated it. And they were actually from China, this particular family. So they really wanted to use chopsticks while they were here in Australia.
Oh, so they thought you'd specially gone out and bought chopsticks for them, and you just left them there.
That's right. And since then I have actually, because we do actually get quite a few Asian families come through from Singapore, Malaysia and China. So I've actually got chopsticks there now in the property.
Isn't that awesome? So it's nice when people are really happy with something that you've done by accident anyway, but even if now that you've learned, that they appreciate that type of thing. I'm sure, as you say, you get the 5-star listings just by thinking about having something that other people want. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And never underestimate the small little things that you can do to make somebody's stay special.
Awesome. Great advice. So mathematically though, does all this make sense? So hopefully this will all come up in the right order. But I'm assuming that, well, I'd know that normally if your parents were renting this out on a residential basis, they'd probably have, a 12-month contract?
That's correct.
And then they're going to have property management fees because they're not in the area. They're going to have power and water costs, but they don't have to clean it. They don't have to organise bookings. They don't have to, they don't go in and access it themselves. It's all sort of done remotely. So that's sort of the positive, and we'll talk about the money in a
Yeah, that strategy is a set and forget. So you don't have to worry about it until the lease comes up again or they wreck something in your property.
Yeah, well, let's hope that doesn't happen. But, insurance again. So with Airbnb, we're going to have, it's good because you're doing the management for your family. I don't know how much you charge, but obviously there'd be some cost if people are having that done by non-family or even family.
Yep.
So I don't know, is it about 20% that sometimes people charge for?
Yes, and you can actually, you could effectively manage the property from remotely, because you can actually get things with like keypads that hold your keys, or you can actually have keypads so that they actually get a code to get into the property. So you could actually manage it remotely, but you'd still need to clean it.
Yeah, I think Bernadette Jansen was talking about, she's got a cleaner that she organises, so she gives them strict instructions, and like you say, she's got like a lockbox, and information for people, and sort of an online booking system that she uses using Airbnb. So you can do it, but obviously just an extra cost if you're not doing it yourself. But got to work out what your time and value of that is.
And but of course, you could just have like a checklist, so that they've got to do certain things, so they just check it off every time they clean it.
Yeah, absolutely. Same with anything, isn't it? Short-term stays, or even if you've got a furnished property, you've got checklists where you want to make sure that property managers are looking after it as well. So all of those things would have to be taken into account. And of course, with Airbnb, people are just paying a set fee, aren't they? Which covers water, power, all of the stuff that they use while they're there.
That's correct. And you can actually have it so if it goes out the booking, so you can have, for example, I've got it set up so for 4 people it's the whatever the cost is, but once they add people, you can actually add an additional cost per person.
Okay, great. So you get that bit of extra power and stuff, especially water, covered. And what about cleaning? So cleaning, you'd either get a cleaner in or you do it yourself, so that's going to be a cost. But one of the things I was sort of thinking with depreciation is going to be much more likely on Airbnb, because all of your chattels and your equipment is what you can depreciate.
That's
at
right.
this stage. Who knows what can change. Whereas if you've got a residence that's built before 1985, for example, you can't claim any of the capital anyway, but it's going to give you, potentially some extra tax benefits. Who knows? Get some advice from your accountant always, but that's an option.
Yeah, and
So,
keep all your receipts when you're furnishing it so that, you can give that to your accountant as well.
yeah, absolutely. Linen, all your crockery and all those types of things, they can all be written off, I'd expect. But if you think about Airbnb, you're not going to have potentially 12-month occupancy. It's not like every night of the week somebody's going to be there. So I know you've shared with us that in your particular property that you look after here for your parents, the off-peak is averaging about 50% occupancy.
Yes, that's right, because we actually do get quite a number of people travelling through Coffs Harbour.
It is a beautiful place, I have to say.
So they're normally going to Sydney from Brisbane, or or the vice versa. So that we seem to be busy 50% of the time, even when it's off peak, which is good.
And then your peak times are school holidays?
Yes.
So we're talking 90%. I mean, that's really good, isn't it? Just that keeps you busy.
That is really good. And also we get bigger bookings. So on the off peak, we tend to get 1 to 2 nights. But during school holidays, we'll get 1 week to 2 weeks booked.
Well, that's great. That makes it easier for cleaning as well, doesn't it? You're only doing 1 a week rather than 1 a day.
Absolutely.
So I suppose the other thing, and you mentioned this with your parents, because they really wanted to have somewhere they can stay when they come back and visit you, so they can actually book it out themselves.
That's right. And we've got other family members that like to come up here as well, so they can use it. Mum and Dad are happy for them to use it, as long as they give me a lot of notice. So actually today I've got my cousin coming down from Townsville with his family, and they've booked it for a week. So,
excellent. Did you give them mates rates?
we do, yes. Mate rates for family.
So overall, if we were to compare having it rented out for 12 months on a normal contract where it's sort of set and forget, as you say, then there's one set of income that you'd expect. So we're going to just do a bit of an idea. We haven't gone into numbers here in relation to the exact amounts of money that you charge and what you would have got residentially, because everybody's Airbnb could be different and their rates could be different. But just as an overall, so after we've discussed it, you were saying that the owner's actually grossing 3 times the amount on Airbnb that they would have done as a residential property.
That's right.
And even after you take out all of your costs, power, cleaning, all of that, they're still getting 2 times what they would normally get residential income.
Absolutely. And they're able to use the property.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, to me, that's just awesome. And again, as you mentioned before, it really gets down to where the place is, how you market it, how you look after it, the ratings that you get. But that makes a huge difference to your income. I mean, especially for your parents, because they're probably, I'm presuming they're retired.
Yeah, Dad's still working because he loves his job. But yeah, the income helps. I think, income helps.
Yeah, huge difference. And like you say, when they still get to use it, that's just the icing on the cake, which is awesome. So is there anything else you want to share with us before I let you go, Lucinda?
I did actually think of something. What's the one thing? No, I can't think of it now.
Otherwise, it's another interview coming up. But that's really good. I think if anybody's been thinking about Airbnb and you weren't sure about it, Lucinda's been able to provide some, on the ground feedback from somebody who's been doing this for how long have you been doing it for now, Lucinda?
So about a year and a half now.
Great. So you've got some good numbers because it's been a full year, a good understanding of the pros and cons and, the difference that it can make to your income, which I think is phenomenal. And so if anybody's thinking about it or you've got any questions that you want to check with Lucinda, any comments, please either put them on Facebook at Property Women, or otherwise you can email, probably use Jo's address, Jo, J-O, at propertywomen.com.au, and she'll pass on any of your questions and feedback to Lucinda. But if you put it onto Facebook, that's much quicker. We can try and respond as soon as possible. But great to have you on the spotlight. Thanks so much, Lucinda, for doing this short notice. It's awesome that you could share all of these different ideas and cover the myths, your misassumptions, the mistakes, and also the important mathematics of it. So thank you so much, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, guys. Have fun, everybody. Take care.
Bye.